Should a person who questions free speech be given the right to talk about it? Giggling is good. Here are your choices. A, of course, it's their right. B, never. Free speech is a fundamental right and never to be debated. C, I hope so, because Unitarians question everything and we like to talk about it. D, all of the above. E, none of the above. The correct answer is complicated. Free speech stands at the center of our liberal religious faith and of our democracy, a government by the people and for the people. It is also a basic human right. Its protection is a mark of a free society. Both Article 19 of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the First Amendment to the United States Constitution recognize the need to protect free expression. The fact that these protections even exist indicate not only the principle's importance, but its fragility. For free speech is never free. It is not valued in every country in the world, in every church in this country, or in every home in this city. This is because many parents, clergy, and government leaders keep control and exert their power over others by limiting their children's or their people's access to information and knowledge, information that would challenge their authority. So some fundamentalist parents homeschool their children. Many ministers insist that their parishioners parrot a creed. And some governments not only ban or burn books, but control the media, even the internet, and people's access to it. Free speech is never free. In the year 399 BCE, Socrates said he would rather die than sacrifice his right to express his thoughts openly. Charged with corrupting the youth of Athens and of not being religious enough, he was killed. He was killed. The ultimate act of censorship and denial of free speech. Killed for not silencing himself. Jesus also was killed by the authorities because of the impact and influence of his words. Free speech is very threatening, can be very threatening to those in power, which is why it requires protection and sometimes sacrifice. I despise what you say, but will defend to your death your right to say it, is one way of expressing how high a value we place on our right to call out and criticize anyone and everyone, from a parent to a pope to a president. Self-interest, or my desire to hold on to my right to speak freely, implies that I will also protect your right to speak your mind, even when I may be offended by what you say. In a democracy, we are taught to tolerate people with different perspectives than our own, no matter how offensive their religion or their politics may be, because we know that everyone being able to speak their mind maximizes the chance of truth being told. We listen because we are truth seekers, not truth manipulators. Therefore, we even encourage the conflict and collision of myths, mistakes, and memories, lies and half-truths, facts and fables that make up our civil and sometimes not so civil discourse and debates. The best test of truth is the power of a thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market, wrote John Stuart Mill, the most influential English-speaking philosopher of the 19th century, in his book On Liberty. The best test of truth is the power of a thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market. So on the anniversary of the day, which is today, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, as we begin the month of July and engage with our theme of independence, when we celebrate our nation's founders for fighting for their right to be free and to speak freely against the government they found offensive, it's a good time to examine the power, the purpose, and the potential pitfalls of free speech. Because free speech is always in tension with other freedoms and principles. Which is why, even though the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the people to assemble, our history is full of Congress making laws that limit these freedoms. In times of war, certainly lawmakers and citizens both are more comfortable limiting free speech. For example, before 9/11, only 20% of Americans thought the First Amendment went too far in protecting people's rights and freedoms, while after 9/11, 50% of us did. But it's not only in times of war that we put limits on free speech. It was Judge Oliver Wendell Holmes who in 19 used the analogy of shouting "fire" in a crowded theater in which there is no fire, or in a sanctuary like this, as an example of why we should also limit people's right to speak when they are intentionally trying to harm others. Free speech protects us from tyranny like no other freedom. However, like every freedom, it can also be abused. We have to remember that liberty is not the same thing as license. Having a right and using it does not mean we should abuse it. And so there are also laws against libel and slander. There are laws which prevent us from using our speech to defame and destroy each other, to jeopardize a fair trial, to intrude into someone's private life, to mislead or lie in advertising, or to use someone else's words without permission, hence our copyright laws. These laws are meant to protect us and to maintain a balance between our right to speak and our using that right of free expression to harm others. There are personal as well as legal implications to this tension. Because of how powerful words are, the right to speak freely comes with great responsibility. Many of you already know the personal costs. You may have lost relationships with family members and friends for not only choosing a liberal religious tradition like this one, but for speaking up about it. You may have wrecked a marriage or a friendship by using your right to freely and fully express your frustration or your rage. Some of your relationships may be under stress right now because you have taken a stand on climate change, or on reproductive justice, or on immigration, or some other unpopular issue in the state of Oklahoma, like education. Still, you don't stay silent because your own reasons, the stand you are taking, matters more to you than the relationships you're putting at risk by speaking out. Now, paradoxically, in universities across the country today, progressive students are breaking ties with liberal tradition by preventing conservative thinkers from speaking on campuses. When asked to sign a letter of petition in support of preventing a conservative speaker from coming to the University of Tulsa, Marlon and I refused. We believe in using good ideas to counter bad ideas, not in silencing bad speech. We agree with Judge Holmes, who said the best test of truth is the power of thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market. It's why we invited Salman Rushdie to speak here at All Souls when no other institution in Tulsa would host him. Were other institutions afraid of offending their interfaith brothers and sisters here in Tulsa? It's possible. Because it is becoming more and more difficult to decide where the acceptable limits of free speech lie in communities like ours that are multicultural and multi-religious. But defending our rights to speak freely while also defining the limits to that speech so that we do not cause harm or incite violence is our responsibility. We know this at All Souls. We know that free religion cannot thrive without defending the right of each and every person to speak freely about their faith and their doubts. We know the truth can be and needs to be tested in all areas of our lives: the religious, the racial, the scientific, the social, the political, and the personal. We know the power of the free church also extends beyond our personal spiritual journeys. The Reverend Dr. John Wolfe was able to speak out on civil rights, corruption in the funeral home business, racism in the school system, the appalling state of the arts in Tulsa, and more because our tradition in this congregation granted him the freedom to do so. No church president, no bishop or council or episcopacy could tell him what to say or not to say. And this church and this city are better for it and more prepared for the future because of it. And in more recent years, Marlon and I and other ministers have spoken out for marriage equality, for the Black Lives Matter movement, for women's reproductive rights, for an active response to climate change, and we've been able to do so even when an issue is very controversial within the congregation because of the freedom of the pulpit. Which brings us to what happened here at All Souls last week, when a lifelong member of our congregation spoke in our Humanist Hour. In the past few months, Richard Lloyd Jones was mentioned in an article in the UU World. Richard Lloyd Jones, a founder of this church. He was mentioned in the UU World, the magazine of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and he was talked about by all our ministers from this pulpit. We invited his granddaughter, a lifelong member, to speak because she felt that her grandfather was being unfairly represented in our denomination's national magazine and in her church by her own ministers. She was deeply offended by the magazine's use and our use of the word massacre instead of riot to describe the destruction of people and property in the Greenwood district, and she did her best to defend her grandfather as being a man of his time. We disagree with her wholeheartedly, and yet we thought that in the spirit of the free pulpit and free pew that we could hear her out. She explained to us that she had done research and as the family historian had information we may not know. What could be the harm in listening? She was not speaking on behalf of the church. She was speaking from her own perspective. We felt the church could listen, and then people would make up their own minds about the truth. Because she was in covenant with us when we invited her to speak, and because our covenant states that we will speak the truth in love, we, the ministers of All Souls, never dreamed she would intentionally or unintentionally use the offensive language she did. Unfortunately, the boundary of our covenant was not strong enough to protect many of our members and friends and visitors who attended the Humanist Hour last week from feeling shocked, alienated, from being shocked, alienated, discounted, disrespected, harmed, and even threatened. At the same time, there were many members who were proud of All Souls for allowing such an open and free conversation from the podium, or free presentation, I should say, from the podium, about a subject this controversial and important. What I realized in the past week is that in order to say what she did out loud, to people she has been in relationship with for many, many years, including many members of color with whom she has worshiped and worked, is that she knew she would have to leave the church. And so at the end of her talk, she did, in fact, resign her membership. And so the heaviness in my heart today comes primarily from two places. The first is knowing that she does not feel welcome here because of her politics and her perspective. And I still dream of a world in which we can hold that much diversity in a covenanted community. The second place of pain is knowing that her leaving means she does not have to listen to the impact of her words on the people who are here, the people who remain. When responsible, free speech always allows for a rebuttal and a conversation. And I've been in a lot of conversations this past week, so I can't quote people directly, but I've heard things like, it's no surprise, really, that white people think and feel those things, but it is a shock and a painful blow. Oh, Barbara, let it go. She hung herself with her own rope. I am so hurt and so angry. I thought I knew her. I thought we were friends and respected each other. White people have a lot more work to do if they think racism is a thing of the past, or that it's okay to minimize the violence Black people have experienced in this country and right here in our city of Tulsa. John Stuart Mill believed that by preserving individual freedom and tolerating diversity, a society would maximize happiness. What happened this past week here at All Souls is teaching me that tolerance is not sufficient to create the kind of community we are trying to live into and embody here. Our congregation is more than a political experiment in the practice of free speech and the democratic process. Our congregation is an experiment of the human heart and mind and soul. Being in a community this diverse is a test of our capacity to let our truth be transformed by each other. It is good, but it is not enough to simply tolerate each other. We are here to be changed by each other and to accept each other as we are. This church lives in the tension between the requirements of our work to uproot racism with our commitment to inclusion, to include everybody, no matter where they are on their journey. Which means our practice here is not about political correctness, nor is it about controlling, denying, or censoring, or silencing anyone's thoughts, speech, or actions. Our practice here is about being in relationship with truth and with each other, because we believe a greater and more comprehensive truth is always discovered when we openly share the truth of our lives with each other. Because we believe God is still speaking into our hearts and into our world. Neither Marlon nor I were here last week, and I will talk more about some of those specifics in the Humanist Hour for those of you who are curious. I can't help but wonder today, if I had been, what I would have done. And I invite you to wonder with me, because it's not the last time. Would you interrupt any speaker when they begin to repeat incredibly insensitive and incendiary words regarding any ethnic group? You can answer if you want. I heard a yes. I said earlier that it's challenging to choose where the acceptable limits of free speech lie in a multicultural and multi-religious community. And it is challenging. When you see a person start to tremble or cry because of the words they're hearing, when you watch them stand up and walk out, what will you do? Will you follow them in solidarity? Will you stay to listen so you can argue afterwards? Will you interrupt and say, the words you are using are offensive to me and to many people. I want to hear your perspective, but I would like to ask you to pause for a moment so that those who do not want to listen have a chance to leave, and so that those who want to remain can stay. And when the person was finished speaking, would you stand up and make it clear that their free speech did not reflect your views or your values? It takes courage, a lot of courage. And if you are the one being insulted and demeaned, will you walk away sooner, perhaps, next time than you have before, because you know you are worthy and you have learned and are learning to care for and love yourself? People have the freedom to speak, but in a free country or a free church, no one should be forced to listen. They say sticks and stones will break your bones and words will never hurt you, but it's not true. Words wound us profoundly. And when words have a violent history associated with them, using them can make people feel invisible, disrespected, and even unsafe. There is no one right answer to the questions I just presented you with. It is and it will be up to each one of us, each time free speech offends, to choose how we will respond. In hindsight, I realize we could have denied our speaker access to our free pulpit and stayed well within the standards of modern thinking about free speech. There are strong arguments, for example, against giving people who deny that the Holocaust ever happened a public platform to share their perspectives. I can believe in your legal right to air your views without actually having an obligation to provide you with the means to air them. Still, I am the kind of liberal who believes the right to transgress against liberal orthodoxy is as important as the right to blaspheme against religious dogma and the right to challenge a reactionary. And I believe this is true especially here, not except from here, especially here, especially when we are in this community we call All Souls, because I know in my heart of hearts that it is often only when a person sees and feels the harm they have done with their thinking and their words, with their thoughts and their words, when they see and feel the harm they have done to people they love, that their defenses dissolve, their hearts heal, their minds melt open, and their souls are set free. This has been my experience here at All Souls over the last 5 years working with our racial caucus identity groups, witnessing as painfully slowly as individuals and as a community we grow more whole. It has been a challenging week for our congregation, but I still believe this is a place where we can be and are transformed by hearing each other's voices. And we can only hear each other if we stay together, take the risk, and raise our voices. So please remember this week that you possess the greatest freedom, the power of free speech and expression. And remember that the more powerful the right, the greater the responsibility. Your words and your silences are both powerful beyond belief. So as we celebrate the 4th of July this week, may we be intentional about our silences and use our words wisely. Go and speak in the world with conviction and compassion, according to your conscience, for you are indeed the bearers of the gift of independence and free speech in your personal lives, in your political lives, and your religious lives. Amen. You're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
Love BB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed.
And be a blessing.